Hello Com230, my name is Leland Ly, and today I will be teaching you how to build your own custom-built PC. So first off, why would you want to build a computer? Well, first, it's cheaper than buying a pre-built. If I went to Best Buy and asked them to build me a computer, or to sell me a computer, they would include their labor cost, the cost to put it all together, into their price. And if I made it myself, I wouldn't have to pay that, unless it would be cheaper. It's fully modular, meaning it's upgradable, replaceable, and customizable. So if any of the parts go bad, instead of buying a brand new computer, I can just take that part out and put a brand new one in. And if I need an upgrade anywhere, I can upgrade one part instead of upgrading the entire computer. It's educational, so you can learn about all the parts that go into a computer, how each part works. Clarity, you know exactly what you're buying because you're obviously buying each part. And better performance, because you can take the money that you saved on building it yourself to buy some better parts. And when you hire someone to build it for you, they usually cut corners, and that usually hurts your performance because they want you to buy another one from them. So our buying guide, we have our 4 essentials: the processor, which is the brains of our computer; the CPU cooler, which cools down the processor because it gets really hot, and we'll need thermal paste with that if it's not included; the motherboard, which is like the main connection board that we connect everything together, and that's what makes it all work; and then the random access memory, which allows multitasking. So the more RAM you have, the more processes you can have together running at one time. And you want to make sure all of these are compatible. So certain processors work with certain motherboards, and certain RAMs have different sizes and frequencies that will work differently with the processors. And of course, the cooler depends on both the processor and the motherboard. Your 4 other parts are the case, which is the main housing. It's the only thing that people usually see when you look at a computer, so that's pretty important. The power supply, which supplies power to all components. You want to make sure you don't cheap out on this to have enough power to supply all of your parts. And you want to make sure that it's going to last a long time, because if your power supply shorts out, it will short out the entire computer. Might be really bad. The graphics card, which is usually important for gamers or someone doing big technical or big graphical things. It generates the display, but if we're just using this to do some work, then it shouldn't really matter too much. And the hard drive, which is the storage, and it's usually pretty cheap, but you just want to make sure you have enough storage to not have to worry about it. So the first thing we want to do is construct the motherboard. So in the top left picture here, we have the processor and the motherboard. We want to just slot it right into the little indentation there. We want to make sure we match up the gold triangle of the processor, and there's a little triangle indent on the motherboard. And then we want to apply thermal paste on top of the processor if it's not already on our CPU cooler in the second picture. Then you want to put the CPU cooler on top of the processor. There's usually some mounting instructions within the cooler's manual or in the processor's manual if it comes with the processor. And you want to use the mounting screws to screw it onto the board. And then you want to install the RAM. It's usually pretty simple. You just make sure the indents line up. You want to click the little latches back, and then you want to push it in, make sure it clicks into place and doesn't wiggle too much. Then we want to install the motherboard into the case. This is pretty simple. Usually every case will have little instructions to tell you where to put these small black standoffs, which will screw the motherboard into, so it's not exactly touching the case because that would have some electrical issues, but just slightly elevated on top. So first we install the I/O panel, which is where the motherboard sticks out into the case, and then we can plug stuff in. It's a little shield. And then we want to install the standoffs where specified, and then we just want to put the motherboard into the case where we match up the I/O panel, and we screw in the standoffs to make sure it's not too wobbly, stays in there. Next is our wiring and power. First we want to put in the power supply connected to the case, so we want to pull in the wires through the hole first, and then we want to put the power supply in, making sure we screw in the sides so it doesn't wobble about. And then we want to connect the case to the motherboard. So our case usually has a couple wires that it needs to connect to the main motherboard. That would be the fans, the USB ports. And for that, it varies based on case and motherboard, so you just want to consult your manuals. And usually on the motherboard, it'll print out where things would plug into. And then we want to power with our power supply cord the 24-pin connector, which is on the right here of the arrow, and then our 8-pin CPU connector, which is usually on the top, but once again it varies based on the motherboard. Next, we're going to want to install the video card. So first we want to consult the motherboard manual to see which PCIe slot to use. For me, it's the top one. And we want to push down on this right side latch to open the slot. Then line up the card, push it in, and when we hear a click, that's the sound of the latch pushing back up. And we want to plug in the power. For mine, it's an 8-pin. It could be more, it could be less based on which video card you use. Then we want to turn the system on, plug in the power cord and a monitor, make sure all the fans are spinning, all the lights are on, and we want our screen to have a post display, meaning everything worked together, and usually from there it will direct you on how to proceed. Now you can download all the programs you need on a day-to-day basis, and you can test them out. What I like to do is I like to have both computers running at the same time, and I can have a little race to see how much faster my new one is compared to my old one. The programs I used for this video is Microsoft PowerPoint for the slides, Open Broadcaster software to record my screen and my camera, and Adobe Premiere Pro in post-processing. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can email me at lsl47@drexel.edu. All the pictures I use for this video are from a YouTube channel called Bitwit. I have very nice videos on how to build a computer, and they have up-to-date news on the latest and greatest computer parts available. I hope this guide helped you make a very nice, fast computer, and it will speed up your day-to-day life.